As Narc would say, right? I am just one nerd, desperate for a good MMO. All right, well, let's check this out. Old MMO loot was better. For some more MMO theory crafting, I have a theory that I really think tier sets have been awful for the MMO genre. When you think about a tier set, I think they cause a lot of things. One, tier sets are kind of like participation trophies for everyone, right? Every single person's gonna get their tier set and start working on them. It's very true, very true. The tier set always works like this, right? There's not like a real challenge. It's not this rare thing where you're gonna see someone be like, ooh, they have the special item. You're just like, oh, they have the tier set from this level range or whatever. It's very, very boring in my opinion. This leads to some other stuff. Number one, they're not memorable. I can't even remember the name of the current tier set that I have in games. Showing Lost Ark right here is not a bad example, right? When I made that video, that's exactly what I was talking about. I didn't even know the name of the set of gear that I had in Lost Ark. Meanwhile, right, from other games, older MMOs, for me, it's EverQuest. For other people, it's classic WoW. There's items that you know the name of 15, 20 years later. They're very memorable and impactful that I played like within the last month. They're just not memorable. But when you compare it to, older games that had, where the gear was more like rare gear that, not everyone was gonna have it, right? It wasn't a participation trophy for every single player. I can remember the names of items 20 years later, lots of them. Guys, some of these items are so memorable and just like classic to the experience that in EverQuest 2, there are heritage quests that you can do to get some of these items, and you can either wear them like as cosmetics, or you could make them house items, right? You can put them in your house on display, right? So the golden Euphrates boots, you could get them and put them on display like in your bedroom, in your house. That's how iconic they were in EverQuest 1. So iconic that in the sequel to the game, right, they made a whole thing out of you being able to do quests just to get these memorable items from the original game. Eyes of the Deceiver, Journeyman boots, Golden Euphrates boots. There's a bunch of different stuff I can remember from games 20 years ago when loot was done in a very different way than it's done now. I also don't think a tier set feels like an RPG at all. It's like the MMO RPG has really lost the RPG part entirely. And it's so what I meant here with this losing this RPG thing and that the loot doesn't feel RPG, right? Is the old style loot, it felt more similar to kind of like how loot in Elden Ring is, where maybe you're going to find some cool random thing while you're exploring an area or whatever, right? It's not the same, just go do this thing so you can get this particular tier set and replace your whole set of gear, right? And you could find these items that were really cool and you'd keep using them throughout the whole game, right? Similar to an Elden Ring. Maybe you find a cool tier for your flask, or you find an item that gives you resistance, a special talisman, and you save it and you hang on to it and you pull it back out at like the very late game when you're fighting a dragon that you need lightning resist for or something. This is what I mean by like that RPG feel. Just getting a new tier set constantly and replacing your tier set that just raises all the flat stats up. It's so uninspired and boring. It's really just massively multiplayer online, but it's like a massive multiplayer online treadmill simulator. It's not like an exploration find, right? It is. It really is very treadmill-y. It's just you go through the tier, and then about the time you think you're finishing that up, right, they'll like release some more stuff so that you never really get to finish. Or you're finishing up that set of gear, right? And that you're going to get the next set of gear. And now you got to put the enhancement on that set of gear. And you start the enhancement process all over and go through all the shitty RNG and rolling the dice all over again. So I don't like it at all. I really loved that old style where you could find a really super cool item that was useful through the entire freaking game, and it wasn't going to be guaranteed replaced in a month or two. Find rare, cool items that you'll use, like, for the rest of the game. It's not that. It does not have that RPG feel to the loot system. I also think it contributes to the issue we have in MMOs where like leveling doesn't matter, all this content is wasted, and there's this big min-max mentality of everyone just has to race to the end, right? That's all we care about. Just race to the end as fast as possible. Why?
So true.
So you can get your tier set and finally start doing real stuff and finally have your first piece of real gear. Again, older games, it wasn't like that, right?
Yep.
You could be in your mid-20s.
I'm getting goosebumps.
Some, doing some stuff with the friends, farming, getting rare, named boss mobs to spawn, getting cool drops off them. The stuff could happen so early. They even, again, in EverQuest 2, the sequel, like they did this throwback stuff. Now, if you play the live version of the game now, it's quite a bit different, right? They have to do it. Population numbers, yada, yada, yada. But when they first started that game, man, like they really held true to this. You could start raiding basically in your 20s and 30s back in the days of like EverQuest and EverQuest 2, and you could get those really cool items from these zones that are in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and still be using these items at the max level when you're doing like the end game raiding. It's such a fulfilling process, and it encourages things like teamwork and grouping up and all this stuff right off the get-go. And that time doesn't feel wasted, right? It's memorable. You're forging bonds. You're actually getting stuff that matters. It was such a different experience than the modern experience of where the end is the only thing that matters. It really, truly used to be the journey. Getting items that you might use for literally the rest of the game forever, all the way into your max level and in-game experience. Another side effect of this is that everyone ends up basically looking the same. Everyone has the same gear, right? If you're this class, you have this set of gear with this name. Yeah, and then like unless they have a transmog system, right? And then like there is issues with transmog. Transmog is cool, and with where things have gotten to with gaming, it's obviously like better to have transmog than not have transmog. But again, the older games didn't even have that, and they had those memorable items. So it was like there was this dynamic of as soon as you saw someone, you knew that like they were this player, right? That was cool in your eyes, right? And they had all that cool stuff that you wanted. Whereas now, like, you really don't know, right? Because it's all just transmog. So what the person's wearing isn't actually what they have on. You also can't assess like the quality or the threat rate of the target. Say if it's more of a PvP game and you have no idea of like what kind of gear is really on them. So there are a little bit of negatives, but ultimately I think transmog is one where the pros probably outweigh the cons. And you're using these weapons with these names, and there's not a lot of variety and interesting difference between stuff. Again, not like older games where you could just see someone as soon as you saw them, you're like, oh my gosh, he's wearing an Oracle robe and he has a Stein of Mogok in his hands. I recognize those items right away. That's cool. Yeah. Or the robe of enshroudment with the harvester. I didn't know why I didn't go with those. Those are the Necro ones. That's a little bit more me, but the robe of the Oracle, Stein of Mogok is just so classic. Lose that completely with this tier set system where everyone is just the same. Going forward with MMOs, looking at some of these really interesting upcoming ones like Ashes of Creation, obviously the one I am most excited about. Still true. And the combat update was looking pretty good, guys. I've got a whole video I made previously about how my one real concern for Ashes was the combat. And it's starting to look pretty good. Throwbacks to the old school stuff I'm looking for. And I don't know exactly what their loot system plans to be yet. So I guess that's part of the reason my nerdy ass is making this video is I care way too much about MMOs. I don't feel like there's any MMO that's really currently hitting things the way I would like it to be done. And I'm very, I'm hopeful. As Narc would say, right? I am just one nerd desperate for a good MMO. But I'm always like cautiously optimistic, and I'm just, I'm wanting to put my stuff out there. Maybe Steven will see it. Maybe we'll get some conversations going. Judging by the 170 views, I don't think so. I just really prefer this other style of loot. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Did you ever play a game like EverQuest where, like you could be doing level 20 to 30 dungeons with a group of friends and, a rare name spawns in your camp spot and you kill it and you get a really freaking cool item that maybe you would use forever, or maybe it wasn't for you. And a lot of the stuff was not untradeable, so you could sell it and make a ton of money because it's this special, unique, rare item that people want. There was also a completely open economy back in the day. It wasn't like the modern marketplaces where they set kind of like a rough minimum and maximum and they control the scale of the economy for you. No, it was just straight up open trade in the outright, usually in like OOC chat in the East Commons channel. I don't remember if the very initial iteration of the game even had an auction chat channel. If I remember correctly, it was done in out of character chat because role-playing was also fairly serious. Like GMs would straight up show up and make you change your name if you tried to make your name the kind of immersion wrecking things that people like to do now, right? Like Team USA Trump 30, whatever. Like people love to do that just to ruin your immersion in the game. EverQuest did not let that fly. A GM would straight up show up and be like, you have to change your name right now. You are ruining the game for other people. Instead of like this new thing where it's just you just get up to max level and then you get your tier set and then you start upgrading your tier set, or you just go for the next tier set, or it's
don't do it, Ashes,
and just boring.
Don't do
it's
it.
Not special. It's not
those
memorable.
fucking tier sets
really
out of my MMOs. Don't do it, Ashes.
Style of doing stuff. And loot wasn't as big of a thing, right? You weren't being showered with it constantly, filling up your bag.
That's another thing too, man. Like games now, they really are just. And I get it, right? There's all the competition. People maybe like they don't have as long to play this and that, so they don't maybe get the burnout from the dopamine thing. But I do not like when the game is just constant flashing lights and stupid sounds and just too much loot constantly. It's like just make it more meaningful instead, right? You don't have to scale things in this way. But again, I get it, right? They're trying to keep that constant dopamine thing going, right? Just like Facebook sending you notifications and shit, right? If you weren't even looking at anything or whatever. I really hate social media, so I don't use most of them at all.
Tags and flashy stuff all over your screen. Just here it is, constantly, everywhere. Here you go, here you go. It was special, memorable. When you got a good item that had some good stats on it, it was like, holy crap, because most of the stuff wasn't like that. You weren't showered with things. Everything was so much more special because it wasn't participation trophies constantly being thrown at you.
So
Let me know in
true.
the comments below, what are you guys' thoughts on this topic? I'm always super curious to hear it, and especially on a video like this. It's the entire point of this video.
It was the entire point of the video
on this topic. You know, and hopefully get it, you know, out there to some of these games that are being developed so that maybe there's a chance that we don't just get more of the same, right? Just more of the tier sets.
It'd be nice, man, but sure seems like we just keep getting more of the same garbage.
We like our own video here. Yeah, so this was a video that I made. Honestly, is one of my favorite videos that I've ever made. Personally, for me, is a video that I really cared about the topic. I tried to kind of go a little bit further than I usually go with nice visuals and sounds and everything to make it great. And it only got 170 views. Very, very sad about that. Hence this reaction video. Reaction content is the big thing. We're kind of doing a little test here. Will my reaction video to my own video get more views than my actual video that I made? Just seems like it'd be kind of interesting. And I really want my video to I just want the video to be seen. Like I said, it's one of my favorite videos I've ever made. I'm pretty depressed about the fact that it was only seen 170 times, and a few of those views are from myself. All right, if you guys did enjoy the video, please drop me a like on it, leave a comment, help me out in the algorithm. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much to the YouTube members and the patrons that support the channel. And if you would like to support the channel, you can see the links in the description as well. There'll be a little bit of stuff on screen real quick here, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.